So today I'm going to try in about 50 minutes to explain our family connection to William Gough and John Gough. I've done this before, but today I'm going to do it different. Because today I'm going to go about it by explaining common sense. I think explaining common sense is actually the best video I can possibly make, because if I don't do this now, I'll forget. And I'm pretty damn sure we have this all figured out. There's a few documents I'm looking for, but there's so much common sense here I need to go over with you guys. This is, the future Gough family needs to know this. There's me. There's my dad. Ooh, where are we going here? There's my grandfather. There's his dad, Frederick, and then his dad, Thomas. And there's John Gough, the ever-elusive John Gough. That's the one we're trying to figure out. And there's his father, William. Of course, there's Clement and Margaret, Lawrence, Clement, and Patrick Gough. Patrick Gough inherited Ballyorley House. Ballyorley House is where our Irish relatives live. There's actually an explanation for it online. It's a country house in County Wexford, situated nearby the village of Boulavogue, as well as near Monamolan. Now our relatives still live here. They're 7th or 8th cousins. So there's Boulavogue. And we're just pulling it back here. There's Kilcormac. These are names that come up quite a bit. Raheen Duff. We've been able to find our relatives in all these spots from back in the 1800s. There's Ferns. If you pull it back a little bit there, you're going to get Milltown. Oops. There's Milltown. That's where William and Anne lived. Let's pull it back a little here. What are we looking for here? Hold on. There's a place to keep track of there. Monagear. There's Ullart. Okay, so there's Boulavogue there. That's where our Irish relatives are from. And there, Tom Sala. That's right near Tom Naboli. That's where William grew up. Tom Sala. See, there's Scarawalsh right there. And Scarawalsh is just in the lands above Enniscorthy. Now, our William's brothers and his family, that was their center, Enniscorthy. They were still in here, but they mainly were there. And Stevens owned lands in here. Mary owned lands in Scarawalsh. Of course, that's because Tom Naboli, where William was from, was right here. Tom Sala. And then there is Boulavogue. And we're just going to take a little hike here. So if you go up back to Ferns, remember Milltown we've established is about here. Look, it's on the way to Camolan, okay? These are not far drives at all. These are pretty close. The Camolan region is called Ballyotter. And if you take that road from Camolan, geez, where do we go here? There's Camolan. If you take that road there, it connects to this big one. And where does it take you? It takes you to Gorey, which back in the 1800s was a big city center. Well, not a big city, but like big for Wexford. It would have been smaller than Enniscorthy and smaller than Wexford town, but still a pretty big area. So let's go and see some more stuff. There's William. Here's an 1811 map of Wexford from an actual survey by Valentine Gill. Now, what are we looking at here? What are we looking for? Well, if you can see there's Milltown and Ferns right there. As you can see real close, there's Mr. Murray. That is who we believe is Lawrence Murray. Anne's dad. There he is. Now he's spelled differently here, but it's the same guy. And we can find him in the records that I showed you before, where he signed a petition to keep William from being executed. John Gough of Camolin, Abraham Gough of Enniscorthy, and Lawrence, it's a W, Murray of Milltown. Actually, no, it kind of looks like a U. Of Milltown in the parish of Kilbride. All in county. Came before me, blah, blah, blah. So, John Gough put down 100 pounds, Abraham 100, and Lawrence, and that's with a U. Alrighty, so can you see that Mr. Murray at the top there? Look, there's a Mr. Gough right there. Mr. Gough. And where is that? That's in Tom Sala, see? And that place is Tom the Bully. And right there, that's Scarrow Walsh. See how close that is? Super close to where William's from. Yeah, if you just go over there, there's Boulevard. So close. And not everyone's names. There might only be 20 names visible here on the whole map. This is just for wealthy landowners and people that, have money from the area. So William and Mr. Murray, both of them, they were well off. That's an important factor in what I'm about to show you. So I found this index. It's a will index. Probate administration, blah, blah, blah. And I found William Gough. And I found a lot of Goughs in here. Goff. But, look what I found. I know it seems harmless, but with context, it doesn't. There's a William Gough. 1. Remember, this is an index to wills between 1811 and 1858. So this is like a 47-year period. There's a bunch of Goughs that are Goff. He's one of 3 or 4 Goughs. He's the only William Gough, Gough. And he passed in, Gorey town of Wexford in 1824. So he established he had lands here. He lived there. He also lived with Anne, we think in Milltown. And if you go past Camolin, there's Gorey. Gorey town land is like this. Another thing to keep in mind is that the people mentioned in this will index are not just random people. Like this Anne Gould is not just some random Anne who passed in 1827. She had considerable land or assets. You wouldn't be listed in this because not everybody is listed. This is a list of people that are who's who. And when you kind of put the dots together, you can kind of tell that our William disappeared. And 1824, there is no sign of him after that. There are other Goughs and other Williams here and there, but this kind of tells us it's him. Just the fact that they wouldn't just put any average Joe in this. If you're in this document, you probably are somebody that had the kind of land and money that William would have had. Here's a list of Goughs here. You'll see Abraham. That's Reverend. That's Abraham's son. And Anne Coote from Rahinduf. Died in 1841. There's our Raheen Duff right there. And there's Kilcormac. Balliorly. And Bull of Oak. Oh, and this is also important. Is Nakavaka. So there's Nakavaka. So don't forget that. Nakavaka, Bull of Oak. Okay. Kilcormac. We've seen Raheen Duff. Alright, there's Nakavaka. And there's Ferns. Of course, that's where Milltown is, right? There's Tom Sala. The Nakavaka. Very, very important to remember where everything's at. And you can see by car. Well, it's 9 minutes, 6.6 kilometers, Tom Sala. And like that's if you take the road. If you were to go straight across, it'd probably be like 4 kilometers. So that's where William lived. What's important about Nakavaka, you say? There's William. And where are we going here? There's Mary. So this is William's daughter. Okay, Mary Gough. This is from July 1852. We've seen this before. Rental of the lands of Nakavaka, situate in the barony of Gorey. Okay, so see, it's in Gorey. No, come on, phone. Cecilia represents John Gough on the lease, I guess, and see, it's dated 1804 for the lives of John, who would be 56. So 1796. Michael, 50 years old, and Mary, 52. Nakavaka, Bull of Oak, Balliorly. Of course, we've established that Tom Sala to Nakavaka is about, well, probably a 5-kilometer drive. Look how close it is to Bull of Oak. It's next door. How many Mary Goughs and John Goughs would there be that close to Bull of Oak? Think about it. There's the Kilcormac region. Raheen Duff. And this is all so close. So just to put into perspective, it's a 9-minute drive. We're talking 6 or 7 kilometers. It's about a 6-kilometer walk. So I'm not sure exactly who that is. Could be a sister. Just look, GOFF. But we do know Anne and John went by GOFF. William did not. There's Arthur John. He passed away in Cork. I think, I'm not sure. I think that might be, well, I know it's the name of Jonathan Mullen's first son. It does kind of seem far away, though. Eleanor, there's Elizabeth, 1821. That's Abraham Sr.'s wife, Elizabeth Stevens. Elizabeth in Dublin. And then these ones down here, these are Whoretown Goughs. They're not connected to us. You can tell, like where it says Whoretown. Or if you see a Reverend, you know, they're probably the other side of the family. Jacob's a very common name. Those aren't our Williams, we know that. This John here, I believe is John of Comolin. I believe he's our Irish relative's ancestor. I can't say for sure. But the Dragoons and the Yeomen are connected somehow. So I think that's him. I can't find him in any records past 1826. That's another reason why I'm pretty sure it's him. And then everyone below John, I don't think is connected to our family. The ones above, though, except for Jacob there, yeah, probably. But those are the Goughs listed in this index. And I'll just do this for reference. Gorey and Camolin are about 11.6 kilometers away. That's not far by today's standards. It's a little far from back then, but when you have a horse, it's, it's like going to a big city, like going from Dad's to Charlottetown, 25, 30-minute drive. It's not it's not impossible that William ended up in this Gorey area in 1824. John of Camolin is from Camolin, right? There's Milltown, and there's Camolin there. And if you look, we're talking a 7-minute drive. 7 minutes. I mean, he wanted to go see John back then. That's like I don't know, not that long a horse and buggy ride. It's close. Milltown to Ferns is even closer. Look at this. 4-minute drive, 35-minute walk. That's just a nice little exercise there. There's Milltown, where William and Anne supposedly live. We know Anne's dad, Lawrence, lived there. And there's Boulavogue, okay? What's important about Boulavogue is that's where Ballyorley House is. That's what John of Camolin inherited. That's where our Irish relatives are. So it's an 8-minute drive. Not that far. Everything's real close. More perspective. So there's Milltown. If you go straight down, there's Tom Sala. That's Tom the Bully, okay? That's where William owned the family home that he grew up in. It was in his possession during the rebellion. And there's where Lawrence, Murray, and Anne lived. Well, Anne lived with him, but probably went back to Milltown. Now look, it's even further than Milltown to Boulavogue. It's a 9-minute drive. And we know William went back and forth. Look at that. That was William's home with Anne. Actually, that was where Lawrence lived. It's 8 minutes to Scarrawalsh. You're like, well, what matters about Scarrawalsh? Well, we'll get to that. Okay? Now, if you were to go straight over the land there, you'd be there quick. It's a 10-minute drive, 7.1 kilometers. But if you were to go straight across, we're talking 1 or 2 kilometers. Okay? That is Tom Sala. And that is where the family home was. That's where William lived. And that's Scarrawalsh. Okay? And we know William owned these lands in Scarrawalsh. He owned them. More perspective here. Tom Sala to Enniscorthy. Now we know that Clement and the family lived in Tom Sala, and they traveled to Enniscorthy quite a bit. It's a 2-hour walk. But it happened. There's Enniscorthy down there. There's Tom Sala right there. And that's longer than what I've been showing you. Now, you see this? These are the lands of Scarrawalsh. And these are the lands of Knockavaca. There's Boulavogue, okay? These lands in between, I think they were owned by William and they were inherited by Mary and John. Our John. I think John either sold his land and then moved with the money to Prince Edward Island. And Mary kept her land and, well, the rest is history. Of course, look at where these lands are. There's Ferns. And look, there's Milltown. Ferns. And these lands right here in the middle. Knockavaca. And, whoops. Look at that. There's Tom Sala. Smack dab in the middle. Knockavaca. Tom Sala. And that is Scarrawalsh right there. Let's just get it to come up so we can see it. Scarra Walsh. What do you guys think? Just kind of ram this into your guys' head here. Scarra Walsh. Mary on the lands there. Tumsala, that is where William grew up with his family. With Clement and his other Clement and Abraham and Margaret Whitney. And there's Nakabaka. Those are lands Mary owned. And you just go up a little bit here. You get the Ferns. And there's Milltown. That's where Anne and Lawrence were from. And if you go up, you end up at Camolin, where John Gough, the yeoman, the ancestor of the Irish Goths, lived. And you just go up a little more there, and you end up in Gorey. Oh, yeah, one more thing here. There's Ballyotter. This whole region here with Camolin and Ballyotter. I have it. I have the parish records. So here's the Ballyotter, what do you call it? Parish records. And these are surviving records. Most of our records aren't surviving. That's what our problem is. So I had to go through millions of these. There's Camolin. Okay. Never mind the number. I think it's just the date of the month. December, probably. Joseph Keogh. And these are the parents, I believe, and sponsors. So we find Michael and Margaret Gough as sponsors, Gough, suggesting this is either the brother of John of Camolin. I suspect it is. Could be the father. Doubt it, but it's possible. Michael and Margaret, the most common names. Definitely John of Camolin's family members. There's Camolin again. This is for John Barton or John Carton. I think it's his baptism. Lindsay and Kelly Murphy are the parents, and the sponsors are Matt Lacey and looks like Celia Gough. Okay? But it's an S-C-I, and I think it's actually Cecilia. But people don't spell properly back then. Celia or Cecilia. Look at the date, 1816, and look at the spelling there. Cecilia Gough, Gough. There were not many Goughs back then. We do know that the Goughs that we could find are from John of Camolin's family. Remember, this is not John the Yeoman here. This is John, aged 56 years in 1852, would be born in 1796. That's our John Gough. That's his sister, Mary, and I think it's his cousin, Michael. And I'm going to guess that Michael wasn't the one we just saw, but this would be a Michael named after him. And today we have a relative from Ireland. Well, they're all Michaels. The man in charge of Ballyorley House now is Michael. He's my age. That's who he'd be named after, and that's who I'm named after. Yeah, if you look at this, Ireland Griffith's valuation, which is so important. This is a document of tenements, parish of Kilcormac. You go right down to Nakavaka. You know where Nakavaka is, right, folks? So there's Mary Gough, and she is in charge. Why would a woman be in charge if the woman didn't have a lot of money and power? And of course, where would she have gotten it from? Her father, William. Look at the tenants, Andrew Fenelon and Michael. They pop up with the Goughs all the time. Check the spelling, Gough. Suggests William's daughter. I can't find a Gough or a Mary in John of Camolin's family. And look at the name Oliver Murray. That is most likely Anne's relative. We know this year is in the 1850s. So this is probably a nephew of Anne. Okay? And look, Mary Gough is in charge of all of those people's land there. If you go up, there's the occupier and the leaser, the lesser, or whatever. And well, look at that. Mary's in charge of them all, except for where Mary lives. That's William's son. Of course, there's no name William's son in Wexford. No, William's son was not a common name in County Wexford. In fact, you'd never even see that. Mary Gough is occupying the land of William's son. That's what that is. It's not Williamson. There's no name there. Mary is occupying, or she's, I guess, a tenant on the land of John, William's son. Yep. There's Oliver Murray. There's Mary Gough. It's her Mary. House Books, Wexford, and you see Gorey. Okay? It's weird, but it lists, like, whoop. Let's go back here. You see there's Nakavaka. Okay, but it's still listed as Gorey. And, whoop. You see that? So when you see William in 1824 is listed as Gorey, it's not really a big deal because they're not naming the smaller communities. Okay? I'll show you with the Goughs. They're kind of just connecting people to the bigger centers. The smaller little towns are never mentioned. If you go through the whole document, you notice this. It's just a greater region of Gorey. It's our William, 1824. A little more perspective. In around 1820, when William died, Gorey, well, 1821, there was 2,132 residents. It almost doubled in 10 years. But there's only like 2,000 in Gorey itself. And Gorey was actually a bigger center. If we look at Nakavaka, I mean, there's nothing really there. I looked it up, and they say less than 100. There wouldn't be a whole lot more than, there'd be a lot less than 100. Look at Boulevard. There's nothing precise, it says here. Oh, you guys are probably going to want to read that, but literally there's just a handful of, well, let's just be generous. There probably wouldn't be more than 50 people in Boulevard. See, Wexford town around 1800 had about 11,000. Enniscorthy 5,000. New Ross 5,000. Gorey 2,000. So those are the big centers. The other places I showed you were small. Here's another record of our Cecilia here in Nakavaka. She was a complainant, and let's see what for. All right. There's Cecilia Gough, complainant. Might be a little hard for you to read. Parish of Kilcormac in Nakavaka. The defendant is Oliver Murray of Kilcormac as well. Townland of Nakavaka. The defendant did unlawfully assault in October. So, Oliver Murray. We've heard that name before. Oliver Murray, 2 years later. Lesser. Mary Gough. So that's who I think her Cecilia Gough is here. It is Camolin. I mean, that's the families are interconnected at this point. I think Cecilia is the sister of Michael, daughter of John. That's my guess. I don't know. Now back to our records. We've got a weird one. It's hard to really explain this one. It's hard to read it too. It looks like Nork Robin, but it's not. It's Knock Robin. It's N-O-C-K. It's spelled wrong. Thomas Hughes. You're thinking that it could be anything like Muse, but it's Hughes. And Thomas is the son of Mary Gough and Thomas Hughes, Michael Gough and Betty Hughes. And, okay, a lot of people in Wexford called themselves H-U-S-E, and they wrote it, but I think it's Hughes, like H-U-G-H-E-S. And you're thinking, wow, it's not our Mary Gough, different spelling. Well, this same woman with the same man shows up in the records, G-O-U-G-H, next time. Okay, Knock Robin. What does this mean? This is our Michael that we think exists here? Let's take a look. Mary and Michael. Knock Robin. So look, it's a 19-minute drive, Knock Robin. Chabulabode. Okay, but hold up. Look at how it's all situated. You could cross land. It's a weird drive. Knock Robin is right next to Camullen. It's right in Ballyotter. Look at that. There's Ballycanoe. We know that William went to a church in Ballycanoe back in the early 1790s. We know that because in his petition, a famous priest vouched for him and said that he had been a parishioner in Ballycanoe. So, what do you think? Knock Robin, Camullen. Hold on, let's do somewhere else. 18 minutes by car. So, there's Tom Sala, and there is Knock Robin, where Mary, we think our Mary, had a child named Thomas. Now we're in December of 1821, and we have a Knock Robin. Much easier to read. John Hughes is born, baptized, I guess. Child of Thomas Hughes and Mary Gough, same people, sponsored by them. Elizabeth Doyle, maybe that's Ellen Doyle's mother. 1821, hard to tell, but there you go. That's Mary Gough, G-O-U-G-H. And there's a John. What do you guys think? 1821. Knock Robin. So it turns out I looked through my shoebox and I didn't save the Anne Murray stuff. Don't ask me why. I gotta go look for it again. But I found Anne Murray, born in 1763. I'm pretty sure it's her. Lawrence is her father. Let's see if I can find it. Hold on. It's funny, there's a Lawrence Murray there. This is after 1824. I believe I found him. I believe that this isn't Anne, by the way. This is Kilcormac. This is County Wexford. Raheem Duff. And that's where I think Anne Murray resides. Didn't we say that in the beginning? Yeah, we did too. We found an Anne Murray who passed in 1841. We don't have a Lawrence though. But Roman Catholic is right. This is 1826, and it's kind of crazy that he outlived William, but I'm pretty sure he went back to school. It looks like that's what he's doing here. Yeah. Now look at that. Okay, I found a birth date. Spouse Darby Murray. Child Lawrence Murray. I don't know if I got that right. I think it's the right document. I just don't think that's filled out right. Never mind. Scratch that. I think that's Lawrence in the record. But I don't know if it's our Lawrence. It could be. And I think Lawrence, it's with a W. Mother Mary, possibly, was from Dublin. Now, there's a million Marys, so this could be anybody. There's no proof, but the fact that the baptism of 1763 suggests very close in age with William. And Catholics come from Dublin, and William had strong support in Dublin when he was almost executed. So the birth date I can't prove, but 1763 to 1841. And now you're thinking GOFF again. Anne and John kept the GOFF name. 1841. Possible if she was born in 1763. I'd love to check for Murrays, but we're not going to find a Murray because this only goes to J. Last names. No M's. And no, I cannot find letters J to Z. This is a little context I want to put into this video just to kind of clarify a few situations, because we know that our Lawrence and his daughter Anne don't seem to have like a wife or a mother, right? And we know that our Martin Doyle and Ellen, there's Catherine, but Catherine would be her stepmother. Catherine would be like 6 when Ellen was born. So we know that Ellen had another mother, but why was it that the mother is not in the picture either time? Also, when William brought Mary to Wexford, where was Sarah Hesley? We know that this lady named Sarah Hesley was Mary's mother. She was also William's housekeeper. So there's our Sarah Hesley there. So Mr. Gough, his housekeeper, his servant John Doyle, who could be related to Ellen Doyle and Martin. They were leaving on the Mary Ann, setting sail for England. This is just months after Dixon was pardoned. Dixon is one of William's best friends, Father James Dixon. He's famous. You can find him on Wikipedia. He was his brother was executed. He was a big rebel rouser, Thomas Dixon. James Dixon was a little more behaved. So you see there's Mr. William with Sarah Hesley as housekeeper, and there's Mary Gough. Now we just assume Sarah Hesley was the mother of Mary. Actually, no, we know. We have, there's records from Australia. They're called musters, and it shows that Sarah Hesley had a child in 1806 named Mary Gough. Mary Gough's already listed as Mary Gough at that point. So we believe she's born in 1802, give or take. But they showed up in 1802. So she arrived in November on the Nile, I believe. And that was November 1801. 1801 on the Nile. Mary was born in probably late 1802. And of course, on the land record, it's listing her as being born in 1800, which is wrong. It's an estimate. I'll show you. If you remember this document here, the lands of Nakavaka. There's Cecilia representing John. Of course, this lease was dated August 1804 for John, born around 1796. Michael, born, well, since this document's 1852, Michael will be born around 1802. And Mary, who's 52, would make Mary born in 1800. But it's wrong. She's born in 1802. So this could be wrong by 2 years, all of it. But I think this record right here is one of the most important ones in just kind of, proving where
Mary ended up. Mary stayed in Wexford. It looks like she went with William, went with William to Wexford. But there's no Sarah. We can't find Sarah anywhere on the record. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, why was William with Mary and no Sarah Hesley in the picture? Same with Ellen and Martin, and also the same with Lawrence and Anne. Where was the mother? Well, see this act here? This is in Ireland. This is for United Kingdom. Women didn't have rights. We take it for granted that women have rights today in 2026, but if you even go back 60 years, women had to go through their men to buy a credit card. There was lots of things women couldn't do. If you go back to the early 1800s, if a man decided he wanted to leave the family, he got to decide who got the child. So if a man decided he didn't want anything to do with the kid, he dumped it off with his woman. And if he decided he wanted custody of the kid, he took the kid, and the woman had no right. Women had no right to argue. So if, let's just say, Lawrence and Martin and William might have been younger men. Thus, they don't have to be younger, but a younger man would be more likely to leave a woman and take a child with him. It seems that might be why there's so many cases of a dad with a daughter and there's no wife. Because it would be weird if all three were widows, right? So if you see here, it was about 1839 when things started to change to give women some more custody rights.
Now, just to prove that John went by Gough, he didn't go by Gough. This is our John. He's in the census for PEI back in 1841. He's in lot 12, okay? Lot 12 is right here. It's all in red. So, East Bideford, right across from Enmore. And, yeah. We thought he was from Lot 10. Lot 10, this is where Gough's Bridge is. Right up there. And that appears to be where Hugh lived and where Ellen lived later in life. But this is where John and Ellen lived. This is where they were living at in the beginning, according to the census. You can see their males from 16 to 45. That one male would be John in 1841. He could still be born in 1796 and be 44 or 45. So that equates with what we have. Females, Ellen, same thing, under 45. Number of years of term of lease expired, 10 years in 1841. That tells us they probably moved into that lot 12, in 1830. So they probably got married around 1830. Not sure when they came to PEI, but I think John moved here and met Ellen on Prince Edward Island. Well, St. John's Island. And my reasoning being that Ellen would have been 19 or possibly 18 in 1826. So I'm not sure they would have got married. They could have. But I think he moved here. He wouldn't have liked the little girl. He was older. He was older by 11 years. So, and we do have one problem. This is the one thing that screws up the entire theory on who John Gough was. And this is the problem right here. Not the second one I'm looking at, but this top one here. This is our John Gough. Notice it says Gough because the gravestone, I think, was changed after his death. Birth date 1801. Cask compact. That's ours. We visited the grave before. Old Catholic Cemetery. Hang on. We visited this many times. I think this gravestone, was made in the late 1800s. He died in 1859. You can clearly see January 12th, I think. Estimated, it says 57, age 57, but I don't believe that's accurate. He listed himself as born in 1801 in the census. He's listed in a document working in the United States in the early 1850s. And, well, here he is listed again as 1801. That does not follow with 1796. And I'm going to guess he lied about his age. He must have known how old he really was. He may have not wanted to be 11 years older than Ellen. But we know Ellen fudged her name or her age on the census. We know that she listed herself as 50 and John was 50 in the United States. I'm not so sure people gave their right birth dates or their right ages. So in this John's case, I think the 1801 is just wrong. I don't think he died in 57 years of age. I think he was 63. I think he was born in 1796, and it's possible because of the rebellion and William's role in it that it's possible that John wanted to be under the radar and not come across as the son of William for his own safety, maybe. You never know. That might be why we couldn't find William for so long, because he might have used aliases. Anyway, that is as much as I want to do for tonight. I think it's the best way I could explain and kind of tie the loose ends of who's who and what's what. I could have looked up Anne a little bit better and shown where, but I'm not sure. Like, Anne is listed in that area in the 1850s. It could be a different Anne. I kind of think that Anne died in Rahinduf because, I mean, we were able to find Lawrence there. So, and this is after William's death. So, it's interesting, and who knows? John, her son, we believe, got an inheritance when William died and moved to Prince Edward Island. And that's where he met Ellen Doyle. He may have known Martin and the family before he moved here. Just one more thing. This is Martin's brother. Son. Martin's son, and this is Lawrence Doyle. And you can read that. He came to Tryon in 1815. Him and his brother, Martin and his brothers moved to Tryon, which is basically where my dad lives now, where I grew up. Tryon. And eventually moved up to the Tignish area in 1835. He was a farmer, raised 10 children: Patrick, Margaret, Peter, Ellen, Eliza, Kate, Lawrence, and Mary. So, there's Ellen. And Ellen would be a half sister to all these children because her mother is not Catherine. Catherine was born in 1803 or 1802, and Ellen was born in 1807. So there's no way she was her mother. But Martin, as you can see there, Martin and Catherine, Martin came to Tryon. I think they both did. But Ellen was from a previous relationship. We're not sure who her mother was. So we're going to end the video there. It's getting really, really late. This is my best guess at who everybody is and was and where they were and what happened. And, I think mostly 1824 is when our William passed away.
The thing I'd like to conclude with is the fact that there is no ancestral line coming from William or Anne. After William and Anne in the record, there's nothing. There's nobody. So, who is John and where did he come from? Well, we know William and Anne had a son named John, but we can't really find him connected to them in the record. But we do know that, we had a John Gough here on Prince Edward Island that came from Wexford. And as far as we know, he's the only son of Anne and the half-brother of Mary. We believe from the records we looked at that Mary may have had a kid. Okay, so we're looking into that. She may have had some children, and did anybody kind of connect William? Has anybody been able to connect their family tree back to William through those families? The Bryan family and the Hughes family. That's probably the goal of our future Goughs, is to see if they can find that answer. I'm going to look into it, but it's kind of a difficult one to kind of figure out. So, but if John and Mary were the only two, it's possible our married Gough didn't have children, and that's why there's nobody trying to connect back to this family, because it's just John. So if it's just John and nobody has these answers, then no one can connect the family back that far, because nobody has this in the record. You can't find anything besides the information our family has on John. So that's where we're at. We know John is related to us. It's our John. We just don't have the exact source proving it. But everything else checks out with our family in Wexford. And I think this all makes sense if you kind of look at it in the context of there would be somebody else out there trying to claim John Gough and William, saying, no, you have a different John. Our John's, doesn't have anybody, doesn't have family looking for him, anything. The only family that was wondering about him was our Irish Gough family. My grandfather John reached out to them in the late 1960s and asked them, and he asked everybody. And what happened was Michael Gough, who was the father of Margaret, said, yeah, there was actually a John Gough from the area whose father was William, and he emigrated to Prince Edward Island. And, well, I think he said Eastern Canada, Atlantic Canada. So, but it was understood, we think he ended up in PEI. So my grandfather right off the bat said, well, then that's us. Because we ended up in PEI, and that's how we were able to connect the families. There is a letter between John and my grandfather John, and the Irish Gough's Michael, Margaret's dad. And in the letter, Michael Gough confirms there's no exact, physical source proving it, but it was understood and passed down through the family in oral history that Anne-Marie had a son named John Gough through William, and he went to Canada, Atlantic Canada, and they never knew what happened to him. And when we reached out, that was proof enough for them that this was the family. They don't advertise or brag about their affiliation to William or John. And the fact that we reached out helped us, kind of verify the fact that that's where we came from. So no one else is looking for him. No one else has him in the lineage or has connected themselves to him because, well, there's nobody else. It's just us. And of course, nobody else had that connection with the Irish Goughs except my grandfather. So that's the only reason we know how we connect back to Wexford, is through John and Michael. And that was back in 1966. Here we are 60 years later, and I'm John. And the Irish Gough head of household, as you would say, the man of the home, his name's Michael. Same names, different generation. But, where we'll be in 60 years' time is all up to you, the Gough, or whoever is listening to this who might make a difference and kind of connect the last pieces of the family tree. I'd be interested to find out whatever happened to John and Thomas Hughes, who were, the sons of Mary Gough, or this Stephen Bryan. 100% sure if that's our Mary, but it is interesting because they would be lineage connecting back to William and Clement. So that's where we're at.